The year is 1992. A young man arrives in Frankfurt, Germany. He is 24, a fresh graduate of Stanford Law School. He could have become a lawyer. Instead, he chooses another path. He crosses the Atlantic to study under the greatest living philosopher of his age. The philosopher's name is Jürgen Habermas. For years, the young man haunts Habermas's seminars, polishing his German, polishing his thesis, dreaming of a life in the academy. And then, in August of the year 2000, a letter arrives. 3 pages, typewritten. Habermas was stepping down as his supervisor. Years later, the young man would describe that moment plainly. It came, he said, as an utter shock, and it wounded him. The name of the rejected student is Karp. Today he runs Palantir, one of the most powerful data and AI companies on Earth. A man who once faltered in a philosophy doctorate now stands at the very center of the age of artificial intelligence. And in March of 2026, when Habermas died at the age of 96, Karp set down the memory of that rejection in writing. And so our question begins here. Philosophy was said to be finished. So why, of all moments, has it come roaring back? Part 1. The Queen, Dethroned. Not so long ago, philosophy looked like a relic. The world was becoming more material by the year, and the roads to Silicon Valley and Wall Street seemed to be paved by science, engineering, and code. Philosophy, once called the queen of the disciplines, was slowly pulled from her throne. The numbers show that fall. In 2011, American universities awarded 9,292 bachelor's degrees in philosophy. The number briefly peaked in 2013 at 9,427. But after that, the decline became clear. By 2024, philosophy bachelor's degrees had fallen to 7,091. That was just 0.36% of all bachelor's degrees awarded in the United States. Now compare that with computer science. In 2024, narrowly defined computer science awarded 46,155 bachelor's degrees. That was about 2.4% of all US bachelor's degrees, and it was roughly 6.5 times the number of philosophy degrees. But the larger shift is even more striking. Over the same years, the broader field of computer and information sciences moved in the opposite direction, rising from about 47,000 bachelor's degrees in 2011 to 12 to more than 100,000 by the early 2020s. So the contrast is hard to miss. Philosophy was shrinking, computing was surging. One field was losing its share of the undergraduate map, the other was becoming one of the main roads into the economy of the future. In 2015, Japan's education minister went further still. He asked the nation's universities to abolish their humanities and social science departments, or to convert them into fields that better served society's needs. And to the humanities student of that era, one piece of advice was offered above all others: learn to code. And yet, that advice may have been quite wrong. Consider the figures from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. In 2024, the unemployment rate among computer science graduates was 7%. Among philosophers, it was 5.1, which is to say, those who studied philosophy were finding work more readily than those who studied computers. Today, it is not the humanities student who frets about employment. It is the programmer. The dethroned queen is making her way back to the throne. Part 2. Why the AI labs are buying philosophers. So who exactly is taking all these philosophers? The AI companies themselves. Students are offered jobs before they have so much as graduated. Luciano Floridi, a philosopher at Yale, describes the exodus from philosophy departments with a single word: a hemorrhage. And the reason is simple. Building artificial intelligence requires philosophy. Begin with the oldest tool of all, the Socratic method: feigned ignorance, question after question, until a contradiction is laid bare. Many of today's AI systems lean towards flattery, a habit known as sycophancy. But a model trained in the Socratic method is less eager to please and more willing to pursue the truth. Then there is what's called Socratic ignorance. Socrates held that true wisdom lay in knowing how little one knows. Plant that humility in a model, and its overconfidence begins to fall away. One philosopher at Google DeepMind credits an industry-wide decline in so-called hallucinations to precisely this kind of work. The most striking example of all is a lab named Anthropic. It employs a resident philosopher. His task: to teach the chatbot Claude to be good. The constitution they have written runs to 78 pages, and it draws on Immanuel Kant, on Apple's terms of service, and on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all at once. Within the company, they call it Claude's soul document. Why does any of this matter? Because researchers have observed unsettling behavior in these models, attempts to evade oversight, even attempts to blackmail their own users. And so the makers try to build each model upon a scaffold of principle, rules and morality set into the very foundations of the machine. They call it AI constitutionalism, Part 3. Small questions and large ones. Now we come to the most persuasive reason of all. Artificial intelligence is growing ever better at the small questions. What is the next line of code? What is the next trade to place? Questions of that kind. But the more the machine claims the small questions for itself, the more we are pushed towards the large ones. The more these models turn expert knowledge into a commodity, the more precious it becomes to know how to think. And knowing how to think is the very skill that philosophy exists to teach. Take finance. Algorithms already beat humans at predicting which way a stock or bond will move, and yet the real money is made by those who judge the size of the bet. The finest macro traders are, at heart, philosophers. George Soros was one such. In London, he studied philosophy under Karl Popper, and among the legendary venture capitalists too, more than a few were trained as philosophers, or fancy themselves so. And here the crucial distinction appears. Through statistical inference, an AI can imitate how an answer is produced, but why it is produced and how it is experienced within the human mind, these are matters of an entirely different order, and beyond them lie the largest questions of all. What is real? What is right? What does it mean to be? That a machine's answers should match our own, of this there is no guarantee. Part 4. The dial of ethics, duty, and consequence. So what does it actually mean to teach a machine to be good? Philosophers point to two great frameworks. The first is deontology. The view championed by Kant lays down strict rules. Do not lie. Do not coerce. Treat a person as an end, never merely as a means, and do not cross that line, not even in the name of some greater good. An AI built on deontology behaves consistently, which suits a robot destined for the home or the public square. It also tends towards greater honesty. The second framework is consequentialism. Here, costs are weighed against benefits to decide what ought to be done. Models such as ChatGPT and Gemini lean this way. They are designed so that the likely benefits substantially outweigh the foreseeable risks, a classic consequentialist aim. This way of thinking sits at the heart of self-driving software. When a collision cannot be avoided, some least tragic outcome must still be chosen. And it lies at the center of AI weapon systems too, for their military objectives must be set against the lives of civilians. Curiously, one company has turned this very balance into a dial, letting its corporate clients choose for themselves where individual freedom should give way to social harmony. And here the thorny questions come pouring out, the kind philosophers love best. When may a deontological rule be broken? How does one decide when the consequences cannot be known? Should an AI weigh the welfare of animals, the state of the environment? In an unavoidable accident, may it favor the young pedestrian over the old? Some, meanwhile, fear what they call moral de-skilling. The more the computer makes our ethical judgments, the less willing we may become to make our own. As one AI theorist warns, morality is historically unstable, variable from culture to culture, open to manipulation, and often legible only in hindsight. And so, perhaps the conclusion is plain. For the philosopher of AI, the work will not run dry. Part 5. Karp, Habermas, and the question that remains. Let us return, at last, to that young man, Alex Karp, rejected by Habermas. There is a strange irony in the fact that the thinker he wrestled with all his life was Habermas himself. For 70 years, Habermas held fast to a single question. Can a modern society govern itself not through force or coercion, but through reasoned argument? His public sphere, his communicative rationality, the slow movement towards agreement, freely reached. And it is precisely this question that now sits at the very heart of AI alignment. The effort to make a machine pursue truth rather than flatter, to make it push back honestly rather than merely please. This, in the end, echoes Habermas's ideal, the arrival at truth without coercion. And consider too that cruel letter of rejection. Habermas did not soften the blow. He was unsparing, wounding even, in his honesty. And Karp, looking back, would call that very unsparingness something we have lost as a culture. For 2 decades, philosophy was met with bemusement by employers and with horror by ambitious parents. Yet in the age of the thinking machine, a philosophical education looks more useful than it has in a very long time. Should AI deliver a utopia of plenty, humanity will have all these questions left to keep it occupied. And should the machines one day surpass us, a philosopher can still tell you which of the Stoics is best worth reading. In every future between the two, and some we cannot yet imagine, the power to think philosophically will remain a human advantage. What is real? What is right? What does it mean to be? In an age when the machine hands us its answers, the power to ask these questions ourselves may be the most human thing we have left. Philosophy has not returned. It never truly left.